Greetings. I happen to be a history buff, particularly in the Second World War that my late son-in-law got me involved with. The 60th anniversary is a historical event, to be sure. And you who are listening to these words are to be congratulated. But those who came before you, before this celebration, both the quick and the dead, are also to be congratulated as contributors to the life of this congregation. In the following words, I will actually be speaking for two persons and their families. Pastor John Morin, with his wife Joan and 4 children, and for Judy and me, and Jay and Jody. How so? Because the history that I relate was experienced first by Pastor John Morin and his wife Joan. I am now of the living, thankfully, but Pastor John Morin passed from this life to life eternity a couple of months ago at the age of 93. John was the first or among the first pastors to be called as a pastor of the new Lutheran Church in America that was established in 1962 from 4 preceding bodies made up of Germans and Swedes and Finns. On September 1962, John and Joan with family arrived here in Roseville or Placer County. And he began making calls on former members of a congregation from Rockland, a Lutheran church there that had gone out of existence a couple of years before he arrived. He called on those members, and Cleone and Magdalena Jacobson happened to be 2 that then were charter members of this congregation. Pastor Morin vigorously called on Lutherans, former Lutherans, Christians, non-Christians, just about anybody that he could speak with as he traveled from house to house. After laboring for about 13 months, on October 27, 1963, 63 charter members joined the Lutheran Church called Resurrection. And Lila Mettler is one of those persons who is still a member of this congregation. How about the property that we now enjoy here at Resurrection? It was purchased for $35,000, and it included 13 acres in 1964. Later, 4 acres were sold to Placer County, and that's where the library is at present. Before the completion of the sanctuary in 1965, the worshiping congregation began at the Baptist Church on Auburn Folsom, and the building, as of yesterday, as I checked, is no longer there. Then we went next door from our facility and met in a garage there, and finally at Eureka School before we moved in to the upper room and the now fellowship hall, which was our sanctuary. I was the second seminarian called to Resurrection. I spent a little more time here than Pastor John, as it included 37 years. I was called and arrived here June 29th, 1968. Only 5 months it took to call a new pastor. How things do change. A few thoughts now, remembrances and words of thanksgiving. After a month here, we had Vacation Bible School, and it lasted for 2 full 7-day weeks. And then came September, the beginning of Sunday church school, the Adult Forum, a stewardship campaign which was really well organized, confirmation program, all 3 years, and I taught them. And in time, new member classes and newsletters, of course. Well, how did we get things done then? Well, through volunteers. 2 buildings, and every week 2 families met, usually on a Saturday morning, to do the cleaning. How did we get the lawns and gardening accomplished? By volunteers. Marion Stonecipher was our first real full-time, part-time full-time music director, playing the organ and the piano and leading choir. She lived in Lincoln, and once a month I would go to Lincoln. We would have lunch, and then we would pick hymns. Loved those dates. In time, we had a part-time youth director, and her name was Catherine Gulbranson. She was with us for 2 summers, and then for 6 months before she entered seminary. Kathy Johnson was our first secretary that was paid, and she spent 2 days a week, and we became so very close, and what a beautiful job she has done now for 36 years. Lisa Mangus joined the staff in 1988, and she spent 17 years with me and then 2 years following. She taught the 7th grade confirmation, so the kids got 2 teachers then in their experience of confirmation. A couple things about programs that I fully enjoyed. Backpack trips. Randy Waller called me one day. He was a member of the youth group, and he said his parents and other parents wanted an adult advisor to take them on a backpack trip. And so I went to church council, and they said, well, go for it. And I did. We had 37 years of backpack trips that I and adults and children enjoyed so much. And I still hear from people that attended those backpacks. We went all over the Sierras. Small group ministry was important. We had Bible studies, we had book studies, authors such as Bruce Larson and Keith Miller and C.S. Lewis, Lloyd Ogilvie, mostly non-Lutherans. We had Lenten services during the week, during the Lenten season. I had Lenten sermon series on just about every biblical selection of texts that I could come up with. We had plays that were performed by members of our congregation with meditations after. And then the last couple years that I spent as pastor here, we had Sunday evening worship services once a month. So another sermon to be written during that month. Resurrection has always been involved with needy people in our community. We established the Roseville Food Bank, later called Office. We were instrumental in starting Home Start, a program for homeless people, given lodging, leading them to their full-time housing. Roseville Area Youth Services was established in 1970, and I was asked to be on the board that year. The new name became Sierra Family Services, then Sierra Wellness Group. It now has a $300 million budget with 300 employees in different counties throughout California. And I've been on that board for 52 years. I would say that as I made member calls and prospective member calls and hospital visits, that I was truly privileged to do so. And I became so much more of a pastor through those experiences. Many weddings, many funerals. I want to say congratulations again to the congregation. to Pastor Derek, to Pastor Ralph, to the staff, to Pastor Marty, Pastor Allen, Pastor Don, and Pastor John Ridenauer, who was an interim now living in Australia. Thanks for listening, and I hope it wasn't too long.